Hello and welcome everybody to this week's VAU Mic Check. Today we are going to be focusing on promos. Now, I do have a special announcement this coming week. Now, first of all, for those of you who have been on the Mic Check already, you may or may not remember me mentioning something about talking about networking for this week. Well, I'm going to forego that, and there's a particular reason why. It's because one of my good friends that we actually had on the Mic Check a while ago is going to come back as a special guest this next week, who's going to be focusing specifically on networking and contacting. His name is Eric Reynolds, and he's a self-made voice actor. He's worked for many tech companies that he himself has contacted and gotten in with. So we're going to go ahead and hear from him this coming week, specifically about networking and getting into the industry that way. So while, yes, I'm delaying the promise, I'm not breaking it, but we are having a special guest on talking specifically about that. We also have several other guest speakers that are going to be coming on in later mic checks, which will give you more information when we have that coming up. So keep those on your calendars. Keep coming here. We're starting to get some really cool people who are sharing some really great information. And yeah, let us know if you have anybody that you'd like us to try contacting, try to get on, and especially if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments. But without any further ado, I believe last week Nathan was the one who went first, so he gets to choose who goes first this week. So really quick, as an overview of what's going to happen today, it's going to be a lot like what happened during the How to Sound Announcery mic check that we had a little while ago. So everybody's going to go ahead. We're going to rapid fire through this. Everybody's going to take their first read, and then we're going to stop, and we're going to talk about it. And then afterwards, we're going to go ahead and have the critiqued reads. So that's the way this mic check is going to work out. Anyway, sorry to step all over your toes. Nathan, who's going first this week?
Well, let's say Richard goes first this week.
Well, hunky-dory. And you say that we're just supposed to just read this as however we would right off the get-go?
Yeah, much like the announcery mic check that we had a little while ago. Yeah, just off the cuff, right off the top of your head. Go ahead, give it a read. This is a promo spot, and we'll get into refining it afterwards. But go ahead, give it your best read. Everybody else, during all the reads, try to pay attention and notice some of the patterns that may come up when you think promo and when you hear the promo reads. So, Richard, go for it, and you get to choose who goes after you.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Okay, who's going next?
Song?
All right. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right, Philip, who's going next?
John, you're muted. It's you, John.
While Titanic was the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel. I almost said don't.
I fixed that though, right? It's two O's?
But I printed it out before.
Now there's three O's.
Yeah, now there's
three
three.
O's.
Doomed.
Doomed Ships of the Titanic. All right. Who's going next,
They
John?
were doomed.
How about you, Michael?
Okay. While the Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel. And I nominate Golda to go next.
Right. There it is. There's the microphone.
Oh.
While the Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the... Sorry.
Do I need to go back and fix it?
Oh, okay,
She's got the giggles and now she's in trouble.
Come on, Golda, let's do it.
I gotta do it. Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. And who's going next? And while the next person's going, I'm going to go check on the
Okay,
script.
let's see. Sherry.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right, Sherry, who's going next?
My friend Frank Stecky.
All righty. Well, Titanic is the most Take two. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel. And that leaves Nathan.
Yep, last but not least, our very own Nathan Cundiff.
Well, Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters. The fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. So before we get into the discussion portion, if you have the script digitally, if you refresh it, there should be only 2 O's in Doomed, not 3, not 1. There's the proper number of O's.
Join us
We could add a bunch of those. Join us for Doom.
Sounds like an Invader Zim episode.
Titanic.
Okay, then. So, what did everybody notice about those reads? What were some of the commonalities that everybody heard?
Probably about 4 people added a "the" before Titanic.
Mm-hmm. I believe I was one of them.
I was one of them too.
I kept catching that.
I know I got an answery on a few places. I hit the word "all" a couple. I think one time I hit it pretty hard, and there was a couple of other things that I hit kind of hard that sounded sort of an answery.
Okay.
I know
So,
that.
did anybody else notice a somewhat general shift into announcery for this?
I did notice that shift.
Sure, it feels that way, and you think that way with promo work.
Yeah, with one read, there was a tiny bit of corporate feel to it for some strange reason. It just kind of felt that way. Not yours, actually, Michael. It wasn't.
Oh, really?
you. No, it wasn't.
Okay.
So Michael's like,
Was it me?
hey, I
Was
didn't
it
know
mine?
corporate.
Yeah, now you have to say who it was.
Okay,
Yeah, now
everybody
we
sounds
need to
like
know.
Jesus' disciples. Now, was it me? Is it I? No, actually, it was Richard. He had this little bit of corporate feel to what he was doing.
Okay.
I noticed people breaking between on and then the History Channel. They would go on the History Channel.
Yeah, a little bit of a
The way it's
Shatner
written
there.
is on the History Channel.
Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic
On the History Channel.
on the History Channel.
Okay. Anything else? So we had
Infamous always seemed to be the strong word for most people. While the Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, was how a lot of the reads sounded to me.
okay. So we had hitting various different almost announcery words and a general shift towards announceriness.
Yeah.
Although apparently there was one read that was somewhat corporate, but hey, whatever. So,
I was
that's
trying
your
not
read,
to
that's your
infamous
read.
it, but I'm not sure if I did or didn't.
But did anybody else notice? Was there anything else that people feel is missing from the list of what sort of came up from this script?
Amazing.
Okay. I'd say that's a generally good, overview of what happened. Is once again we all sort of drifted into announceriness.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's go ahead and go through the script. We'll break it down. We'll get the right context of everything, and then we'll go ahead and redeliver it. So first of all, one of the great places you can get a context clue for what emotional state you should be in for the read is the title of the script. So the title of the script is
Doomed Ships with
Yes.
2 O's.
Doomed Ships.
With
Okay. Okay. So doomed ships. All right, not doomed ships and not domed ships. It's doomed ships.
I keep wanting to do a Richard Harvard's. Those ships are doomed.
So what does that make you feel? Like what kind of emotions does that bring up?
Nervous,
Ominous.
ominous, yeah.
Ominous, nervous, dark,
Disaster is
It
upon us.
actually
Yes.
has a bit of a sadness to it
sadness,
because
Okay.
people died in these, situations.
Yeah, tragedy.
tragedy. Those are great words. Those are great things to apply to it. So now we have a general frame of mind. It almost seems to be like this negative, down and dreary sort of emotion. So that's just from the title. Let's go ahead and go through the script itself now and pull out words and phrases and whatnot that can help us refine what they're really going for in this script. So I'll just go ahead and read it through flat and just try to choose the words that you think would help sort of refine the emotional state you need to be in for this one. So, while Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
So you have mysterious coincidences and then jinxed. So there's the
And I would
Jinxed.
say,
Okay.
supernatural feel.
yeah, and I would say fate and tragic as well.
Oh yes.
Mm.
Ill-fated, tragic.
Supernatural. But what we're trying to find out here is what happened to the ships, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's sort of the overall goal. You're trying to bring people in on the, well, what actually happened to these ships? What's going on?
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw this out there. If you disagree, please let me know. But I think the best way to sort of hone in on exactly what you want to sound like and what you're going for is mysterious.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the overall tone for this one is mysterious. There's an air of mystery, an air of drama in it. But I think for me, if I was going to bold one word to put over top of this and make sure that I look at that and stick to that, it's mysterious. So
That makes sense.
anybody disagree?
No, I think that's a good
No.
assessment.
Totally.
It is
Okay,
a good
okay.
assessment.
So if we're going to go with mysterious, what are some things that help bring out the mystery? What are some different performances? What are some different techniques you can use to help make that happen?
Slow down.
Getting a little closer to the mic
Yeah.
and speaking softly.
Okay, so we got
Yeah.
slowing down, speaking softly,
Mhm.
closing in on the microphone.
Getting in a
Anything
little
else?
closer.
Yeah. And I almost see a direction that says, gives us a little bit of a David Duchovny feel.
Almost a little
They're
bit
out there.
whisper, sort of.
They're
Almost
out
a
there.
little bit of a whisper. Okay.
That's the sort of thing I was talking about with David Duchovny, not, you know.
They're out there.
Well, David Duchovny, I think there's a very interesting thing that you bring up because he's actually a great example of this. A lot of his delivery in any of the lines that he reads is fairly monotonous. It doesn't really go too high. It doesn't really go too low.
True.
And I noticed in a lot of these reads, there was a lot of, I guess you could say, unfitting pitch in all of this. People going a little too high on things. People being a little too astute with other things, with other parts of the script. So I think almost a little bit monotonous, a little bit flat on the read could help add to that air of mystery. There is still a lot of play in the flat range, which this can really take advantage of. But I think I would also pose out there on top of getting a little slower, getting a little closer on the mic, getting quieter, is allowing yourself to be a little bit flat in the read. And we'll get to that too. You'll be able to hear the difference afterwards. So now that we have a general tone and a general way to read this, what are some of the key words throughout these sentences that we should maybe nudge a little bit? So let's go sentence by sentence. We'll start with the first one. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. So what are some of the key words there?
Well, like I said earlier, I think fate and tragic.
Yeah.
Okay, fate and tragic.
Yep.
Okay, those are good ones to give a little bit of a nudge to.
How about even sister ships? A lot of people may not know that there was something else built that wasn't Titanic. Her.
That's a good one.
That
is a
was
very
one
good
that what I was thinking a little bit. I mean, I don't know whether it makes sense to emphasize them, but that is
Yeah,
something.
you can give it a little nudge. The fate of her sister ships.
Mm-hmm.
What? There was something besides the Titanic?
Yeah.
And I think I would also pose that, or I would also throw out there that most infamous should be more emphasized than infamous.
Mm-hmm.
The most
Titanic is the
infamous.
most infamous of all ship disasters.
Most infamous, yes.
Instead of the most infamous of all ship disasters, we know it's infamous. Like most people know about the Titanic by this point.
Yeah.
So I would say most infamous. Most is going to be the key word in that little phrase there.
Would you want to billboard Olympic and Britannic?
Yeah, well,
Because
that actually goes along with going a little slower. That's why, Frank, thank you
Okay.
very much for bringing that out, because you can give those a little bit more space. I do agree with that, but I think that'll come out naturally with the read. You know, we've already pointed out
okay.
that sister ships was definitely one of the key points there. The fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic. You know, now you're presenting them. So, yes, I do agree with that.
Okay, because I'm thinking in terms of promo. And when I look at this, Titanic, Olympic, and Britannic are the stars of the show.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So they would.
Olympic and Britannic more so than Titanic.
Okay.
Because we're not covering the Titanic here. This is all about the Olympic and Britannic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first sentence. Let's move down to the next one. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences.
I would say ill-fated liners and mysterious.
Coincidences.
Yeah.
I would say the phrase series of mysterious coincidences.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's one that's been sort of glossed over, a little piece of it that's been glossed over. Let's see, does anybody else think that there's some other place to add
Well,
emphasis here?
possibly histories.
I like
From the beginning.
from
the-
the beginning.
There you go, from the beginning.
From the beginning.
From the beginning. This is like
Okay.
from the outset, because everybody
Okay.
knows about the tragic end of the Titanic. But what
Yeah.
about the rest of its life?
The only problem
Okay.
is if you hit that too hard, you run the risk again of swaying into an ouncery because you're hitting from too hard. You just have to barely nudge
Yeah, I
it.
I
The
don't
first
know.
word of a sentence is
From
hard.
the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners.
It may be a personal choice. I would go lighter on that
Yeah.
personally.
Maybe.
And then to go back again, I think Titanic's also a star because it says the histories of these three ill-fated liners.
Mhm.
So I think you have 3 stars. Unless
So-
Well, I think what that's mostly doing is adding the adding importance to the stories of Olympic and Britannic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
maybe with the from the beginning. If we can go back to the. Sorry, was I stepping on someone?
Then I was just asking, like does that make sense? Where it's actually like these three ill-fated liners were used to add importance to the story of the Olympic and Britannic, rather than add the Titanic into the main storyline.
Although
And
it's
you know
called.
what-
I guess it's called Doomed Ships of the Titanic. I don't know. I wonder if the show.
You have to go watch it now, huh?
I understand they're talking about the Olympic and Britannic, but to me it also seems that the Titanic is in there, and it's talking about all three.
Yeah.
I think, and it says they're joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. So I imagine during the show they're all going to be all three will be referenced, and it says were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed. It doesn't say were these other gems of the White Star Line jinxed. So
I can go with that. I'll agree
okay.
with, I can agree to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and I guess I'm thinking in terms of, and I think about this in terms of delivery too, because you always want to give your stars equal billing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's like Michael Montez and Denzel Washington. So Nathan,
Yeah, if only.
Nathan and Pat Fraley. Everybody's on the same, is equally elevated.
Mhm.
Okay. Alrighty then. So we've got all three of them as part of the story.
Story. And then with the from the beginning, maybe it's just beginning that needs a little bit of a nudge, and not the from the part.
I think it's going to be more of a pause.
The pause will be enough of the.
I think the pause is going to be what makes that,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
as opposed to from the beginning. It's from the beginning, and you have time to think about it. The histories of these three ill-fated liners.
Well, you can carry the emphasis through from the beginning. From the
Okay.
beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of
series.
mysterious coincidences.
See, I think it's
From the beginning, like
I think
because
that-
we're chronicling the whole history here.
okay, and I think that the emphasis is going to be on series of mysterious coincidences, because it wasn't just one little thing. It's like there's a whole series of mysterious coincidences,
Mhm.
and that's going to take up the entire show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to watch, because I want to see they had this coincidence, or was it coincidence? They had this coincidence, or was it
Or
really?
was it a coincidence?
That's where the whole mystery comes into the show.
Yeah. They opened up the show. Hello, hello, hello.
Doomed Ships of the Titanic, and it's written by Nathan Cundiff.
That's a
With
whole
the
nother
lemony
Special
snicket
guest star.
poured in.
Michael Montez.
all right. So getting back to the script here,
Okay.
so we've got the first two sentences down. Let's move into the last couple, because I think we can just add these two together as essentially one part.
Yeah.
Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel. All right. Where should the emphasis go in those?
Gem.
Doomed ships of the
That being
You know
the
what?
title,
To be honest, that entire sentence, were these gems of the White Star, like that should be read on an upbeat and it should be slow.
Mhm.
Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Like, I mean, that's the whole crux of what the show is about. So that whole sentence, in my opinion, should be emphasized.
Absolutely.
And it should all be done, and it all should be done on an upbeat like that.
Yeah. And then you're giving a couple beats between jinxed and join us.
Exactly. And then
Just
there's a
to
couple
give
of beats,
the
and then
listener
it's
enough
join
time
us.
to
We're
think
doomed
about it.
ships of the Titanic. And then at that point, just go straight back into flatline read, because you don't have to emphasize anything with Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the history. There's no beats in there or anything. Just
Mhm.
join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Yeah.
Well,
But that's the big one, I think, is that one sentence. But that's just,
well, I'm drawing a little bit on some of my past experience with promos from the History Channel. There's usually a little bit of a pause before the History Channel.
Yeah,
And,
because that is the title is the
yeah,
History.
that is-
Yeah,
right.
because
That's your tag.
that's where you have to
Yeah.
watch it.
So
So-
I think mentally or written down, there should be a little comma there after on. I mean, I think that's okay. It's not necessarily
pause
meant for
should
you, but
be
it's
there.
definitely- Yeah, exactly.
On the History Channel, like
On
that.
The History Channel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It
with,
should
with,
be there. Okay.
Yeah, with all my experience of doing things for the TV station here, usually that's where I throw in my tag, and that's where I would have that pause.
Yeah, because you're technically calling people to it. So
Yeah.
give it a little bit of space. Give it a little bit of a billboard. That's okay, because right there, the History Channel logo is going to be flipping into shape on screen, as it usually does.
Okay. So here is the question I have about that.
Okay.
It's my understanding that being more conversational has permeated all genres, including promo.
Mhm.
So,
yes.
so in my mind, on the History Channel breaks up a more conversational feel.
Well, yes, it does. You're also a voice actor, and that allows you a little bit more flexibility in the
Okay.
realm of your
Okay.
communication.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the promo, you really are billboarding. There's a way to do there's a way to do that billboarding without coming off as announcery. It does take some practice, but
Mhm.
there is a
Mhm.
little bit of nudging. There is a little bit of hey in your face when it comes to the emphasis on the ultimate client name. I mean, that in the end is why you're being paid. You're being paid
Sure.
for the client.
To build right.
Yeah, so for
Okay.
me, I would read that as something like, join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Okay.
You see, there's just a little bit of pause, a little bit more emphasis, maybe even a slight little bit extra volume on the History Channel, because that's what's going to be there.
That's,
You want
yes,
people
that's
thinking,
our big
"Okay,
star.
That's where I
Again,
got to go to get these questions
Right.
answered."
Again, you have to billboard your stars.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. All right. So everybody got those markings down?
Yes.
Everybody got an idea
One more
of
to
what
make.
do with this?
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
I moved the word doomed and didn't mean to. That word is just not wanting to cooperate with us, is it? You're going, no, don't move it in the sentence.
That word is
It
doomed.
must be doomed.
Well, at least it's not round anymore.
And my
least it's not
copy still has 3 O's.
Did you reload it? Because I
reloaded it,
definitely
everything.
deleted one of the O's.
Well,
All
now
right.
it's not there, but I exported it as a PDF.
Oh.
I reloaded it when you said to reload it. Then I exported it as a PDF, and I guess it was just a little bit late in grabbing the O out.
Well, I'm sorry. You're going to have a doomed ships of the Titanic.
Doomed ships.
Hey, it's better than domed ships of the Titanic. I mean,
Yes, of
that's
course.
really, really underwhelming.
You know, and those glass tops just don't really support this version very
Well,
well.
it probably wouldn't have sunk, though. Think about it. A bubble's going to float a lot better.
It's true.
Yeah,
Wow.
the moment you
Obviously,
pop
that's
it,
some
they-
reason for their construction of their unsinkable ships.
All righty then. So, everybody ready to go?
Yep. Well, I think we can all remember the order. At least I can remember my spot.
That's okay. All you need to do is remember who went before you. Alrighty then. So, Richard, why don't you go ahead? Now, this is going to be critiqued. You are going to get feedback on these reads. So,
Well, that's what we're here for. If we don't get feedback, we're not going to get any better.
that's right. All right. Whenever you're ready, go for it.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these 3 ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. What did everybody think of that?
I thought you sounded too
Cheery.
upbeat on the first couple sentences.
You sound a little cheery.
I kind of kept hearing Pepperidge Farm remembers.
It's like, yay, they're going to all drown. No.
Yeah.
I
And then
noticed that, and
try-
then I slowed down. I went, oh,
Mhm.
this is not right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and at
Well-
the end again too, when you went into join us, it was like, join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Yeah, so imagine that, there's a ceiling you're supposed to stay under. There's a wall you're going to bump your head on if you go too high. And that should be your emotional range. Where you were, like I said, it's okay to read it even a little monotone. If it'll help keep your volume, if it'll help keep your pitch down a bit more into that sort of dark, mysterious, fated, tragic sound, that foreboding sound, that just flatter sound in general.
Yeah.
then it's
Yeah,
okay to read it a little bit monotone. Like that will help you out. Of course, you'll get it's kind of difficult to describe, but even through monotone, there's still emphases you can put into your sentences and different places.
And you know what too, Richard? Keep in mind this is television. This is not radio. So picture in your mind as you're reading this. There's clips from the TV show probably playing in the background. There's clips of people congregating on the decks of ships as the ship is sinking. There's pictures of life rafts being, put down the side, and the back hull of the ship coming up out of the water like this and starting to slowly sink below. So keep those images in your mind as you're reading it, and that'll help you to put yourself into the proper mood to give it the somberness that it deserves.
That was the word I was just thinking of. That word comes to mind. It is somber.
These are sad incidents.
Not to be mistaken with somber.
All right.
Okay, can I throw out something, please?
Go for it.
So as far as mysterious is concerned, the two most mysterious deliveries I can think of, Rod Serling's Twilight Zone, which is going back, and then there was an old show from the 70s with Leonard Nimoy, and it was called In Search Of.
I remember that show.
Both of those used to just scare me. and they weren't doing anything over the top. They would just and it was just it just sent shivers up your spine. And especially Leonard Nimoy on that show, he would just, his sentences were pretty short, and he was quiet and he was flat, and it was.
And the deep voice didn't hurt either.
No, definitely.
It didn't hurt, but it is not necessary.
But
I'm
not
saying that. I'm just saying it didn't.
No, I know.
But it was really how he was leaning in, and it was intimate. And then again, you pointed out, Frank, this is TV, or we're enhancing the video, so that it's almost like it's almost like you're kind of drawing the viewer in.
Yeah, think movie trailer, really. It's just on a smaller scale. It's not a movie, it's a TV show, but basically think movie trailer. The different people that over the years have done the big, what was that one gentleman? Don
LaFontaine?
Don LaFontaine.
Exactly. In a world where time stands still.
But you don't have to work your pipes so hard, Richard. You just you just want to be a little more mysterious.
Yes.
And
you guys are giving awesome directions. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
What comes to mind?
In other words, shut up and let me read.
What was it? Did you have one more piece of direction, Golda?
I was going to say what comes to mind is when you're telling ghost stories around the campfire. How and then she came up the stairs, and there's just this suspense. So if you ever told ghost stories, maybe.
Oh heavens, all the time. I read ghost stories all the time when we went camping.
Well, channel that. So why don't you go ahead, go from the top, give us another read.
Okay. While Titanic is the most infamous of all
I'm going to stop you right here. You are going really high again. Well, Titanic
did I go up again?
is the most infamous. Do you hear yourself doing that?
Yep, I
Well,
did.
Titanic is the most infamous.
Okay. Are you looking at this on a screen, or did you print it? Okay.
No, I didn't print it.
Okay.
I've got things highlighted and stuff.
Okay. Well, something that helped me, and I don't know how you do it digitally, but Rodney Salisbury, when he's talking about being more flat, he draws arrows. You draw arrows under your sentences in your copy. So your arrow's either going across, and then towards the end it goes down. It doesn't go up. I mean, you go up at the question, but
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just maybe even putting an underline on there, not or putting a line above it, not to say, oh, I'm underlining this or highlighting this, but this is a visual reminder to be more flat.
I need to channel my inner Bueller teacher.
There you
Yes,
go.
Bueller.
Bueller.
Go for it.
All right. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star jinxed? Join us for Doomed of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. What did you think of that, Rita?
It sounded like it went a little singy-songy when he hit mysterious coincidences, and then he went back into that somber read. But
Yeah, you
Yeah.
really hit the tone this time, though.
And
In spite of that, you hit the tone this time, Richard. And I was watching your expression. The corners of your mouth stayed down, whereas before, out of force of habit, you're kind of a pleasant, smiley guy. So I think that comes out of you naturally.
Yeah, but you just so you know, you missed a line in White Star Line, and you missed ships in the title. You said "Doomed of the Titanic."
Okay, well, that's not good.
Yeah, but I thought you did a great job getting the tone right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
keep
you
that
want me to do it
tone
one more
and then
time?
fix your little.
Yeah. One
Yes.
more time. Go for
Fix
it.
my boo-boos.
Yes.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
I'm sorry, we're going to need you to take it again. You said doomed instead of domed.
Oh, come on.
I'm going, what did I miss? Oh, thanks a lot. Just because I've been giving you a bad time about the dome.
No. That was a much, much better read this time around.
Mhm.
Even though you did, it's funny. You have this really interesting tone of voice that when you get into the right mind frame of it, like you can go up a little higher and go and go a little lower than what your normal range would be, and it still fits with the emotion. So I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but I definitely felt that after really focusing in after that first read, even though he did go a little higher than I probably would have, he still felt like he was right within that emotional range. Did anybody else get that?
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think it was a little choppy. And I think it was a little choppy because you're really working hard to
try and keep the pace.
keep that
the way-
somber tone. So you could just smooth that out a little. That would just come with more rehearsal, I think.
Yeah, that, and you're
but
also try to add bass to your voice. So just whatever level your voice is at, just do it. I think that's part of the reason why the choppiness is there. You're trying to go down into Barry White range.
Mhm.
It won't
But
go
it was
quite then.
as far as getting the somber tone of the read, though. You've really accomplished that.
Well, I had great direction. You guys are awesome. I appreciate it. That's why I show up
Oh.
every Monday.
What does everybody think? One more read?
Yes, I want to hear one more read, smoother.
Oh, goodness. Okay,
You
I gotta
got
get
this.
water.
You got this.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
That was your best one yet.
That had an excellent flow to it.
Yep. Very
Yeah,
nice.
it was your best one yet.
Yay.
Alrighty then.
I'll give me a golf
You did
clap
it.
for that.
Congrats.
I appreciate that. I like all the directions. I know that a lot of folks don't like to do this, but man, this is how you get better. This is we're not
Mhm.
beating up each other. We're helping each other.
Yeah.
And that's
And
big.
then, I'm sorry, Richard. I was just
No, no,
going
I'm
to
done.
say. So remember how you felt physically. Remember your posture. Remember, what were you doing with your shoulders? What were you doing with the corners of your mouth? And the more you practice that and you think, okay, this is what I need to do to get into that somber tone, then you can dial it up more quickly.
Yep. Actually, Frank's mention of I needed to see in my head kind of what was going in the background really helped a lot too. I mean, I've seen the movies, I've seen all the pictures. It's that made a difference too. So I appreciate that. You guys have all given great directions. Thank you.
We thought you were once on the Titanic, Richard. That you.
There was a door.
Unsinkable Richard.
Once I kicked that broad off, I could stay afloat.
Was it John, I think? I think John was the next read, right?
John was next,
That was
yes.
Philip.
Okay.
Actually,
Yes.
Philip was next.
Oh, Philip
Oh,
was.
Philip.
I wrote it
Yeah.
down.
Yep.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll consult you, John, for the order.
Richard, Philip, John, Michael, Golda, Sherry, Frank, Nathan.
Ah,
All right. Well, Philip,
Fantastic.
you're up.
all right. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. First, a little bit of direction.
Little
Again,
fast.
anybody else can, a little fast.
Yeah. Oh well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a little fast.
Slow it down.
Slow.
Anybody else notice anything else?
You just gotta get away from the over pronunciation of all the words, like every syllable of Titanic, Olympic, Britannic. It's still excuse me, it's still a little over pronunciating like that, but that and slow it down a little bit to give it some more gravity, because that's what it deserves.
Just slow it down and relax, dude.
Okay.
Dude.
Can you physically move your microphone, or is your microphone close enough that you can really close in on it?
Is this okay?
Yes.
Yeah, because one thing that'll naturally keep your voice slow and keep your tone a little quieter is pulling yourself really close in on the microphone.
Okay.
Proximity effect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Another take.
Yep. Pull it in closer. Slow it down. Let's hear it.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Okay. I think you've got a much better tone and a much better sound going this time around. So those can stay the same. The thing is I think you're missing a little bit of the story, because you really glossed over sister ships. Like that's where the interest is supposed to be generated from. The fate of her sister ships. You're trying to bring that out a little bit more. That's the whole crux of this show. It's the sister ships. It's not necessarily Titanic. You're probably going to touch on that, as Sherry pointed out. We're probably going to touch on that. We're going to go through some of the story of the Titanic. But the more interesting thing is how the Titanic's fate was sort of connected to the sister ships of the line.
All right, then. Sister ships.
Mm-hmm.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. What did everybody think of that, Reed?
Much better.
That was very much better.
Yeah.
All right.
That was a fantastic promo.
Yeah, I
read right
think he
there.
found his money read right there.
All right. Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Nice work,
All right.
Philip.
I stepped out for a minute. Can you do it again, please?
All right. One more for safety.
You know what? Why not? Go ahead. Give us one more safety tech.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Bravissimo.
All right.
Yeah,
And
that,
now-
that time we had
Grazie.
the recorder turned on. We're good.
Okay.
So, John, I believe you're next.
Yes, I chose you.
Thank you.
Bless you, Frank. Sorry.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined in a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Love the ending. The beginning was a little fast.
Well, actually, I thought the beginning was the better. Like, I do agree it was a slight bit quick, but I think the tone was much better at the very beginning. Did anybody notice that the tone started getting a little out of hand as he went through the rest of the script?
A bit.
Out of hand.
Out of hand. Well, what I
Crazy
mean
tone.
is
Yeah.
you started
Yeah.
John, you started out
Somber, and then it
really
went a little-
nice and somber and almost monotone. You've got the perfect voice for this and the perfect voice specifically
Mhm.
for that kind of read. And
Mhm.
the emphasis that you put on there wasn't too great. It wasn't too high. It wasn't too much. It was you were right where you needed to be. And then the lilts started coming back.
About where?
Like right after the first sentence,
Okay.
after similarly tragic.
Way too early then.
That first sentence, though, it was wonderful. Like that would have been if you could carry that same feel through the rest of the read, I think that would have been it. That would have been the best read of the night.
Okay. Anything else?
Just try to watch similarly.
Similar?
Yeah, a lot of us are having trouble with
That's-
similarly. It sounded like similarly.
Similarly.
All right.
Similarly.
I turned up my gain a little bit. Hope it's not too hot. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Yeah.
I heard him
That-
channeling
that
his
was-
inner Leonard Nimoy.
Nice.
That
Yeah.
was very,
Nice.
very
I was
solid.
having
That was great.
flashbacks to In Search of. I used to love that that show. I did. I really
It's
did.
creepy.
Spock was on it. That's why I liked it so much.
He had a great voice. I'm surprised he didn't do more voiceover work.
He probably did more than we know.
Yeah,
Probably.
I know he was definitely in at least there's at least one video game that I know he did, but I don't know about much else.
Star Trek Online.
But that was a
No, actually,
fantastic
Kingdom Hearts.
inner Leonard Nimoy right there. It had that feel.
It was
to it.
very mysterious.
I mean, I was picturing that crystal skull on the opening sequence of the show.
Yeah. How's it go?
Now, one thing I noticed is that your the way you inflect your words, your lilts, actually come from head movements. I don't know if you notice yourself moving your head,
No, I
but you
don't.
move them in tandem with the lilts.
Should I move the hands instead of the head?
I think you should. I think when it comes to the different emphases you need to put on words, I think using your hands would be a little bit more appropriate for this particular script.
All right, I see that.
So why don't you give us one more read, channel what you did before, but try using your hands for the emphasis rather than your head.
Okay. While Titanic is the most infamous of ship disasters, the fate of her start over. While Titanic is the most infamous of ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Other than that little flub up, I thought that was a fantastic read.
Yes.
That was
What did everybody
Yeah,
else think?
Yeah.
His voice
I
style
agree.
in this
Yeah, really
story
good.
is very nice.
It's perfect.
Thank you. I just have to learn to read.
Hey, you're halfway there. You got the delivery part down, and you just need the reading part, I guess?
well,
Working a
there's
little
still
backwards
time.
there.
You are young.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty then. So, John, who goes next? Is it me?
Yes, it is.
Okay. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Okay, we can wrap it up. He's done well.
It was very
Mr. Whisper works really well with this stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Batman is a perfect read for this.
He was invoking active hush all over that thing, and it was working very well for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Michael, that was very dramatic. I would like to hear more conversational just for grins. It would just be different.
Okay,
Just to be different.
I can try that. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel. Sort of like a mix in between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I actually liked that one better. And it's just personal preference. It's not that there was anything wrong with your first one at all. It's just two different choices.
Well, I guess it's something else I could use.
I kind of like the
it
tone
was,
of the first one better.
Okay.
Yeah, I liked the first one. This one was a little bit sped up and was a quicker monotone, which made it kind of I like the first one best.
Okay.
It was much more mysterious.
Yeah, I've been sort of working on that, getting in close and getting that sort of mysterious feel.
Very mysterious.
The only thing that bothered me a little bit, Michael, was
Mhm.
the question, were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? It seemed like you read it pretty monotone, and then on the last word of the sentence, the upspeak was pretty pronounced. It sort of popped a lot, the
Okay.
gems of the White Star Line jinxed. It seemed
So then,
disproportionate.
do you think I should bring down the jinxed upspeak?
Either
do you
that
think
or
the
just
rest of it?
slightly raise it and just monotone throughout that whole sentence. That's the way I tried to read it. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Like the whole question, the whole sentence sounded more like a question. At least that's what I was aiming for, instead of punching on that last word. It just, other than that, it's a very good read. It just seemed that stuck out to me.
Did anybody else hear that same thing? You guys get that?
On the second one, all I caught was a little bit quicker and a little bit, the tone was a little higher, so I didn't notice that.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Well, let's see if I can fix that. Maybe I can keep the jinxed from going too high.
Yep. Try again. Read again.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Awesome.
Yay!
Excellent.
That
Just
works.
flat
That
out.
works.
Perfect.
And then they'll follow that nice somber read with up next on Pawn Stars.
Yeah. Oh boy. Alrighty then. If nobody has anything else to say, shall we move on?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So John, who's our lucky next contestant? It was Golda.
Golda, yes.
Golda.
Okay. Let's go do it. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. What did everybody think?
I
It
thought
sounds
you did
so
a good job.
cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, go ahead, Richard.
Oh, I was just going to say the tone. I thought you did a good job of keeping the tone all the way through. For that, I thought was great. What'd you have, Frank?
Oh, I was just going to say, after hearing nothing but male reads, it's so
Yeah.
cool to hear a female read do this. And it just brings a whole different perspective to it. So very, very nice. I enjoyed it just because, again, it's that male-female difference of tone to it. So it's kind of neat. I liked it.
Yeah, I did too.
I noticed you kind of had a look on your face, Golda, after the read. What were you feeling?
I was reading a little too slow,
Okay.
and I think I punched the sister ships too much.
I don't think you did that. I don't think you
Okay.
punched the sister ships a little bit too much, but I would agree. I think it was a touch too slow because it didn't really feel natural. It felt like you were trying to actively slow yourself down.
Uh-huh.
I think I caught something where she stretched out doomed right there on that
Because there's
title.
3 O's.
Because there's
And
3
it-
O's. Yeah, of course.
It sounded like one of those B movies getting ready to start. Doomed Ships of the Titanic.
Okay. I did scratch it out and put doomed with only 2, but maybe I should make it
Yeah, maybe
dope.
it should go.
Just a little bit of a stretch. It wasn't
No,
too
but,
much of a stretch, but it was just enough to make it sound a little bit more like a trailer in a way.
Okay.
But yeah, so go ahead, speed it up just a hair. So
Okay.
it's within like your slower, but your natural slower talking pace.
Okay, cool.
And shorten up doomed a little bit, I guess. I don't know, apparently.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay. While excuse me. Frog. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these 3 ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel. Join us for, excuse me.
Oh, do you need to take a sip?
It
It was good.
It was good.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think of Investigation Discovery.
Oh, cool. So join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I first read over this, just
Mhm.
quick little aside, I was it was in a local meetup,
Mhm.
and I was one of the coaches, quote unquote, there because I had more experience with other people, with directing and whatnot. And what we were supposed to do was break out into groups, read all of them together, choose one, and choose somebody to go up. The person that I chose to go up didn't, and I had a wide range of voices there. Actually, had their voice in a slightly higher register than most of the people that are going to be here. So don't worry about like necessarily bringing the natural tone of your voice down, because it seems like you're kind of doing that.
Okay.
Like, do you notice yourself doing that while you're?
Yeah, maybe. I'm also, my throat's a little weird because I choked on some pills the other day.
Oh, okay. Well, I can understand that, but yeah, it seems like you're almost trying to push your voice into a slightly lower register.
Okay.
Did anybody else notice that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And at times I liked the second read better than the first read. The first read to me was a little too breathy at some points. Mm-hmm. It felt too labored.
So don't worry necessarily about where your voice register is. Where it is right now is totally fine. Okay. The most important part of the read is pulling out that emotional state. Okay. So even if your voice is really high pitched, as long as you're up close and you're not deviating too far from where you need to be, you'll still communicate that.
Okay.
So yeah, you can lighten up on your voice a little bit. It's okay to let it be where it naturally sits, but everything else was perfect. So give us another read.
Let's see if we can do that. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel. The History Channel.
Yeah, you did good. Yeah, that was a fantastic.
I like that. That was more natural. The only thing is, and I've actually heard it 3 times now, is you go by a series of mysterious coincidences.
Yeah.
And that's a whole phrase, a series of mysterious coincidences.
Yeah, I was trying to emphasize the mysterious coincidences part without the series because I heard Michael do that, and I liked how that a series of what? Oh, they're mysterious coincidences.
Yeah.
Sort of a discovery of what it was. Does that sound unnatural?
Yeah, it sounds like you're losing your place.
It sounds like
it's a very unnatural break.
Okay.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you're putting more emphasis on series.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're going to put a break, if you're going to use a little bit of a break to emphasize something, it should be either just before or just after it.
Okay.
So, by a series of mysterious coincidences.
Okay.
Or by a series of mysterious coincidences.
Okay.
I think that's how Michael did it. And then you were breaking right after series.
I mismarked it, and really good at following marks, apparently.
Well, there you go. Just shift the mark over, and you'll get it.
Okay, yeah, that was the only spot I had as well. I noticed the same thing, Sherry. It was going along real smooth, and then there was this. It was like a speed bump or something.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Give us one more read.
One more read. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. Besides the little bit of a frog in the throat that it seemed to come up at the end there, you did fantastic. Fantastic.
That was great. It reminded me a lot of the one of the VOs that they use on the Investigation Discovery.
Cool.
It smoothed out the speed bump. It was much nicer pacing.
Cool.
All right. So, John, who's up next? Sherry, right?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Be right back.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic, and Britannic were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. What did everybody think of that, Reed?
It would help if I unmuted.
Yeah.
I'm talking to myself
touch.
and nobody's responding. I'm not used to that. No, technically I am. I thought it was a conversational read. I missed the pause on Doom Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel. It was on the History Channel. It just kind of
Okay. That's actually a style choice that I made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was one
But I can definitely do it the other way too.
I don't have a whole lot of picking, Miss Sherry. That was
I do have a little something. I think the tone went a little too high in some places.
Okay.
It always happens right at the beginning. People want to go really high up on Titanic. While Titanic, you don't need to go that high because you're coming out of the dark and mysterious emotional range. While Titanic.
Okay.
Also, I've heard this consistently, and it just, for some reason, I haven't pointed it out yet. A lot of people really hit join us. And you did the same thing, and it sounds really disingenuous. Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic.
So it would be more join us for
Doomed Ships of the Titanic.
Okay.
Yeah, join us for, you're starting off low. Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic. You're billboarding Doomed Ships of the Titanic. Right now what you're doing is putting the billboard on Join Us.
Okay, and I just want to billboard Doomed Ships of the Titanic because
Yes, join
that's
us for
the start.
Doomed
That's
Ships
the
of
title.
Titanic on the History Channel. Or on the History Channel. However you want to do that at the end.
Okay. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. What did everybody think of that, Reed?
That was good.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
There's sort of this driving feel where you feel like you're going somewhere, but you don't know where it is.
I can see
the
I can see the title popping up on the screen just as she's billboarding that.
Yeah.
So, they're doing one of those,
Thank
fancy
you.
titles that they do for the History Channel. And
it made me want to go see the show, so I can't say any more than that. It was like, well, that sounds interesting.
I'm going to go look for the History Channel right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Michael really helped with pointing out the title as opposed to join us and de-emphasizing join us.
Mm-hmm.
That was very helpful.
No problem. That's why I'm here.
Correct.
I don't know why. I just decided to do an accent on that. Whatever. Anyways.
Very good. Very good.
Stylistic choice. We'll call it a stylistic choice. Anyway,
Is
yeah,
good.
that was a fantastic read. I
Very nice.
my only real nitpicky thing was you still sort of hit Join Us a bit too hard, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's
I
just
heard
me.
it.
I don't think it was too bad, but yeah. If you wanted to do one more read and just definitely, join us
Really
for Doomed
try to
Ships of the
join us
Titanic.
for Dune.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're just barely lightly walking on Join Us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic. Like, you want to go up on that. That's the billboard. This is how this is where we're getting the answers.
Okay. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
All right. I liked it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to say?
Excellent. The History Channel will be calling Sherry.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your promos on this. Yeah.
That would be 614. No.
Well, no, that was a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Who was going next?
I
My
believe it's
friend
me.
Frank Stecky.
Frank and then me.
That would be
All
me. Keep in mind, I have a cold.
That should help you.
Yeah, you're going to get real deep now.
You'll be have that husky, raspy delivery.
Well, Titanic is the most infamous. No, I'm just kidding.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Wow, 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 wow.
What did
Yeah.
everybody think?
Oh my gosh.
I'm really tuning in now. Sorry. What's that guy?
I know. I'm like setting an alarm in my phone for that show.
You need to be sick more often. Frank.
Wow, when can I watch this?
Thank you.
Let's see.
The
I think it
pacing,
actually.
I'm trying to find something picky. I got.
Well, for
Michael
me-
will have something. He always. He always.
He's good at
Come
this.
on.
I know. I'm
No,
I'm
and that's.
gonna come
I'm
up
not
with-
saying that as a bad thing. It's just I know through all of it.
Yeah,
There's
through all
gotta
the
be.
experience you've had coming
Nothing's
to
ever
my check, you
perfect.
know.
I know that.
No, not even my performances. Nothing is ever perfect. I don't hold myself in any high esteem. I just, this is something that's really important to me. And I really feel like getting down to that little nitty gritty is how you turn a good read into a great read.
Sure.
And we all need to be doing great reading.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Because
for
it's
me-
the little things that differentiate us.
Yeah.
That's why we like
Things
to
that mean a
nitpick.
lot.
Mhm.
So it sounded like you were going into a little bit of that announcery sort of, I wouldn't necessarily say tone because you kept it low, but emphasis on words. Especially towards the end of the first sentence. For some reason, everybody starts off really strong, and then right at the end of that first sentence, it all sort of breaks down. But that's why we do multiple reads. So
Right.
I think you sort of started getting to a little bit of that announcery feel at that point. You started off strong, and then it
Well,
had,
I deliberately went uptake on tragic.
Mhm.
Like I deliberately hit tragic, and if that's what you're referring to.
Well, I mean, it sort of carried through afterwards.
Oh,
You
okay.
had this, from the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences.
Okay.
I'd like to hear you almost monotone it. Like,
Okay.
your emphasis should come more from slight tone changes, not a whole lot, but very slight tone changes, but mostly vocal tension. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters.
Okay.
And, pausing by a series of mysterious coincidences.
Okay. I'll give it a shot.
right.
Well, Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters. The fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Perfect. I couldn't have asked you to do it any different. That was
Nice
Sounded
job.
great.
Nice
Yeah.
job.
Thank you.
because you do have a lot of playroom with that flat range.
Mhm.
Like I think that's a lot of voice actors sort of miss out on that because it's so difficult for them to process. Oh, I'm a voice actor. I'm supposed to make things sound, this is sort of a subconscious, but I'm supposed to make things sound big and cool and exciting for people. But you have a lot of play with that that flat range that you've got, and everybody has that they can really play with, and you really, I know this is sort of like a dip of the toe into that area, especially since radio kind of shuns away from that, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Mhm. Well, no, radio, you got to be big and bright and like,
Yeah. And this script in particular is the exact opposite of that.
Well, and just by virtue of the subject matter, I mean, it is
Mhm.
going to be, like we've said, somber, and it's got a lot of gravity to it. And, again, you can picture all the graphics and behind, and the different things with people falling off the ship and struggling in the water or whatever and all that. So it's going to have that tone to it. So.
Mhm. Well, for some of these, and this is a note to everybody, even to myself, for some of these scripts that you might get, and for some of these auditions that you might do, it's okay to play with that flat range you've got, because you can really pull out a completely different read from yourself in almost this flat monotone area that you have in your voice. And I bet you, if you listen to yourself talk, you'll notice that you actually don't really get all that crazy in talking. Some people, they're surprised at how monotone they actually are, and that's okay. Monotone can be conversational. So, anyway.
So are there any fast tricks that you use to pull out different styles, Michael?
Fast tricks that I use. I listen back to what I've done.
Okay.
So I will go in and I will record a couple of takes, and then I will step out of the booth. I will listen to it, and then I'll do the same sort of critical listening. At least I try to, that I do here on the mic check. I think, okay, did I find the emotional range that I needed to? What will help me communicate that? Where does the emphasis go here or there? Did I do all of that? Did I stick with it? Well, I mean, if I was listening back, I might have heard the same thing that John pointed out about my read. I might have gone a little too high on Jinxed. Let me try it again without going too high. Or maybe we might try that other read that you had me do, Sherry, where I was a little bit more conversational with it. That's another alternative you can do. But it's mostly the stuff you're doing here is going to help you come up with different reads in the future.
No.
Absolutely.
And if I can just piggyback on what Michael said, Sherry, too, I know, like, when I'm doing production work for the station, something that helps sometimes is when you're playing it back, like Michael says, and you're listening back, close your eyes. And again, like we were saying, close your eyes and then start visualizing what the pictures are that are going with something like this. And then just listen to the read as you close your eyes. Don't read along or anything, but just close your eyes. Okay, now you see the people and the ships and all this kind of. Now, does the read fit with the images that you have in your head? How closely, and if it's like, well, no, that sounded like really happy as that guy was sinking under the water for the fifth time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's something I've always done, is just whenever I just crank it right up and I just close my eyes and I just sit and just listen, sort of in a trance-like state. And it seems to help sometimes. So it's just a thought.
Another thing is with the exercise that we did at the beginning, coming out with the different words, those have slightly different emphases on things. So mysterious is actually slightly different than gloomy or dark. Dark can be all somber, can be all monotone, all low, all hopeless. But mysterious has a little bit of play in it. Mysterious can do something slightly different and can sound slightly different, even though you're in the same proximity and you have the same script. So, again,
and also too, like you said, Sherry, before when we first started this, there's absolutely nothing wrong with channeling your inner Rod Serling, or channeling your inner Leonard Nimoy, and just thinking about, okay, how would it sound if they did that script? Now I'm going to do it just like they did. They would have done it. But it comes out sounding like Sherry, and it comes out sounding fantastic like you did it.
So
Good.
a little bit of an aside there. Thank you for the question, though. I got everybody thinking. And finally, we have Nathan.
Yes. Yes.
Yay, Nathan.
Yay!
Woo! Craig
Getting
as well.
to use my new microphone stand that my wife has so blessed me with,
Aw.
which means that I can adjust it to get closer to it without having to turn any knobs. I can just, it's great. Okay. Well, Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters. The fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Okay. And what did everybody think? Let's get some feedback going.
Little
I like
heavy on
that
the
pause
drama.
between White Star Line and Jinxed. Nobody else did that, but I thought that was kind of cool.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
John, I think you had something you were saying. What was it?
Little heavy on the drama.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay.
I would agree.
It
Definitely
didn't
want to-
come across as real natural, Nathan. It was.
Okay.
It seemed a bit forced. I don't.
Okay.
That's not a good direction, and it's the best I got for you. Sorry, pal.
Yeah.
Probably
It
too much
sounded-
drama.
It sounded more like a parody than genuine.
Understood.
There you go.
Yeah, I also noticed one of the things that you did when you came up close is you started talking out of the side of your mouth that was closest to the mic.
Yeah,
Don't worry about that. You talk straight on.
gotcha. Well, Titanic is the most infamous of all ships. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
Okay. What did everybody think of that, Rita?
It was better.
Yeah, that was much better. That felt more natural.
Mm-hmm. It didn't have that forced feel to it anymore, did it?
I took
No.
the hush out of it, and that it was for Michael. It works. For me, it sounds like I'm trying to do a cartoon. So it just kind of.
Well, here's the thing. You're still moving a bit quick. I think you
Yeah.
just need to slow it down. You've got a
Okay.
good tone going. You just need to slow it down a little bit.
Okay. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
That was a really solid read. That
Yeah.
was really smooth. That was really
That was
That
great.
was the best. That was the best out of all of them. That was really nice.
your best read so far.
I went for, if I'm reading for WVLR, this is how I would do it.
Expand your horizons. You're not reading for WVLR. You're
Yes.
Reading for the
history.
for the History Channel. The Discovery
True.
Channel. The History
Discovery
Channel.
Network.
True, but
The History.
in a sense, I did a book promo that had kind of not so much of a somber tone, but it had to have a specific tone to it, and so it kind of brought that out. I just kind of thought back to, okay, just kind of lean in this direction, pull the hush out of it, and don't push so hard,
Mm-hmm. I think that was the big key for your improvement is not pushing so hard.
Mm-hmm.
True.
I think that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Well, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What does everybody think? One more safety take?
Yes.
Yes.
That sounds
Why
good.
not? Go for it. One more safety take for us, Nathan.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
They just keep getting better every time you do
Yeah.
one. Get better and better and better.
Yep.
That was really nice.
Good stuff.
All right. Well, we've got a good amount of time. We made some really good time through this one.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Would
And I
anybody
don't feel
want
like
to-
we rushed it. I thought it went
No.
along and
No,
we
I don't
still
think so
all did our stuff.
I have a
Excellent.
Titanic related story I can relate really quick. if anyone's interested.
Well, how about we save that till after the recording?
Okay, I wasn't
Yeah,
sure
we'll
if we
close
were
this
doing
out.
that or whatever. So.
Well, I mean, what I was going to
will shut up
offer
now.
is if anybody would like to give it another try, if anybody would like to see if they can improve on their read after having gone through all of them. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll try it again. Maybe something. I don't know what I'll do different. I'll try to be different.
Okay.
Read it like a seafaring captain of some kind.
Arr.
No, not a pirate, not a pirate. Just like somebody who's spent their adult life on the sea and all that. Not necessarily a pirate.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
See, I like that.
And then she threw the piece of jewelry into the ocean.
That's exactly what I heard. That's exactly what I heard.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie, so I don't know, but you sounded to me like a lady who tends a lighthouse and has for the last 65 years on the coast somewhere.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going for. Like an old seaman's wife with her shawl and
Yeah, and it's like,
Yes.
gather round, children, while I tell you a tale. Just throw that kind of Martha's Vineyard sort of voice in.
Nice.
We watched
Maybe
the bodies wash up in the bay.
I might be the outlier here, but when I think of professional or somebody who has had a lot of experience with something, I actually think of them almost going more monotonous. Like it's just every day, it's nothing different, it's nothing new. Like, does that make sense? Like if you talk to an engineer about, or like somebody
because they've been over it a million times. Yeah,
exactly. You talk to somebody from Boeing about parts of an airplane, and they'll just rattle things off, and it's just this is a day-to-day thing for me. Whatever. Maybe you're a researcher who has exhausted all possible knowledge about the Titanic. Everything that's happened. Everybody who is on there, all their individual stories, and now you're branching out to something else.
Well, that could be the case if you were reading it like a park ranger or something like that. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic.
The tourist attraction here in Pigeon Forge,
or whatever. That's that would be something like that.
right there.
Please step this way. Watch the rope, please. Thank you.
No pictures, please. No pictures.
Accident one.
You could put a little bit of enthusiasm, just a little bit more enthusiasm into a read like that. And while Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic.
I'm just thinking that you were mentioning that monotonous. I've taken people on 5,000 tours of this museum.
Yeah.
or it's almost like Sheldon, on Big Bang Theory.
Oh,
Yeah.
While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic.
Exactly. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. You'd sort of almost have that little like that.
You're in my spot.
Alrighty then. Well, anybody else? Would anybody else like to give this another try?
I could do one with an accent.
Sure.
Yes.
Now we're going into characters. Okay, go for it.
Yes.
It's trying to be different. While Titanic is the most infamous of all ship disasters, the fate of her sister ships, Olympic and Britannic, were similarly tragic. From the beginning, the histories of these three ill-fated liners were joined by a series of mysterious coincidences. Were these gems of the White Star Line jinxed? Join us for Doomed Ships of the Titanic on the History Channel.
See, I like that too.
That was
It might be a
fantastic.
nice version of David Attenborough there.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that.
Good.
That worked really. and it sounded more natural than when you did it before. I like that. I like that. That worked
Yeah.
very well.
No, that was really good.
I guess I've been working on accents long enough that that's more natural. I don't know.
Alrighty then. Let's see. What time is it? All right. I think this is a good time to go ahead and call it.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, very much for joining once again. Next week, we're going to have on Eric Reynolds as a guest speaker specifically about networking. So get that on your calendars. Make sure to show up next week and have some questions ready for him. All right, everybody. You all did a fantastic job. I hope you guys had a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming in.
See you all next week.
See you guys next week.
Ta-ta, everyone.
Ta-ta.